Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Mobility Matters. This is a show where we talk about transportation, mobility, connectivity, and all sorts of issues related to that. And today, actually, we're going to be talking about how land use interfaces with mobility and transportation. I am your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half-penny sales tax for transportation. Now, my background is as an urban planner, and urban planning, of course, is about how you grow your community over time and all the different elements that go into that. And I'm happy to say that I have two of my best urban planning friends here with me today, and two officials that you may not know, but you should come to know because they're very important in what we do here in Miami-Dade County. And those are the assistant directors of the Regulatory and Economic Resources Department, or what we affectionately call RER. You have the Assistant Director for Planning, Jerry Bell, and you have the Assistant Director for Zoning, Nathan Kogon. Gentlemen, welcome.
Awesome. Great to be here.
Yes, happy to be here.
Thank you. And as I understand, you're both urban planners, AICP certified, all that good stuff, right? So we're going to totally nerd out on urban planning today.
For sure.
Right.
Favorite
And we'll
topic.
throw in some transportation stuff in there.
Perfect.
So guys, for those who may not know, tell us about what RER is, what it does, and how each of you kind of fit in that larger puzzle. We'll start with Nathan.
Sure. Well, RER is I would call it a super department. It was put together about 15 years ago as a culmination of economic type of activities as well as regulatory, and they mirrored those together. So it comprises of the building department, code compliance, planning, zoning, environmental. So anybody that is looking to develop property, open up a business, the idea is that you have this one holistic department that can facilitate that rather than multiple individual departments. So that's kind of RER in a nutshell. Of course, I represent the zoning side of it and platting, where Jerry's more on the long-term planning. So we work very close together, different components.
Good segue, Jerry. So tell us about your division.
Sure. So the planning division is one of the smaller divisions of RER, but it actually punches pretty hard.
Not a competition, guys.
Not a competition, although, yeah. But basically, in planning, what we do is we primarily oversee the Comprehensive Development Master Plan. If you want to think about the Comprehensive Development Master Plan, it's kind of like the Constitution for land use and development in the county. So it really sets the broad policies. And then it gets implemented through land development regulations, which is under Nathan's purview, through specific code requirements. So we kind of set the big picture through the. Also have the planning research section that does a lot of the demographic research, a lot of the economic research that our planning policies are built on. We provide a lot of service to other county departments in terms of projections, in terms of population, service levels. And we also have the Office of Historic Preservation. So we both look forward and we look back. So we're really looking at together.
Now, in each of your areas, are you dealing with countywide issues, or are you also serving as kind of that department for the UMSA area, the unincorporated area? So are you dealing with land use and zoning within municipalities, or just in UMSA, or some combination thereof?
So it's definitely a combination, and it really starts with what Jerry does as kind of the framework. And I like to look at planning and zoning as kind of like a wedding cake. So Jerry really sets that base with the policy, and then zoning kind of builds from that. So I think one real interesting example that really deals with mobility, how planning and zoning in Miami-Dade County is not just for the unincorporated area. It is the primary area, but we do enter into some of the municipalities, is where Jerry's policies and planning have set real strong regional transportation land planning goals. And we call those urban centers. And those are broad policies that generally follow our transit network. So at our stations, whether a station is an unincorporated area or a municipality, that land use policy is equivalently or equitably placed. So this is where it gets interesting on the zoning side as well. How do you implement within a municipality? So we do have some tools, which we're happy to get into all the nuts and bolts of it. But the county has been very strong for many years on setting really land use policy regionally for transportation. Yeah, we can go in on a zoning and really surgically make decisions in specific areas. And of course, that's where we get into charrettes, neighborhood compatibility, and some of the aesthetic components of infill type of development.
Yeah, and I love that component. I don't know who it falls under. I guess it's you. It's that charrette team, that design team, been around for a long time, and I've worked with them in the past, and they're amazing at what they do. And the idea is that is kind of an interactive community engagement process where the community comes together, right? And over a series of, a couple days, maybe a weekend?
Sometimes longer.
Very intensive process. And, well, you tell us about it. Why am I speaking?
It's an effort between planning and zoning, and planning and zoning used to be combined,
Right.
and then they separated it just because both those entities were so busy. But I think since Jerry's come here, we've really been able to kind of work together. We have planners on the zoning side and planners on the planning side that really collaborate on some of these charrette processes. So the charrette, we'd go into the community. There's multiple stakeholders, the various property owners, even special interests, different government agencies, and it's a design exercise. We're putting out. We've got maps, we've got exhibits, and we have people drawing. We have kids that come and participate in this.
So they have some of the best ideas.
They have literally the best ideas. If they planned everything, I think it'd be a lot more. It would be a lot more interesting than what we have now. But we'll go through those exercises. Now, in some cases, we don't necessarily go out and do this large, holistic type of planning exercise. In some of these cases where we're dealing with, let's say, a county-owned property at a transit station, we'll set that policy because we're dealing with one individual parcel. But it's the same concept that stems from planning, where we want high intensity.
Right.
We want to put people where we have infrastructure, not put people where we have to create new infrastructure out west.
Sure.
And that could be supportive of transit. So charretting, the charrette process is one of our tools to really engage with the community.
And it's really a lot of fun. If you haven't done a charrette, folks, in your community, and one comes along, you should really try it. It's great fun. And very effective, I find, in helping to guide policy, because now you have the community buy-in behind you. So Jerry, he mentioned earlier these urban nodes and how that interacts with kind of our plans to expand transit. So can you get into some of that? We have the SMART plan, which we've spoken about many times on this program, so we won't get into it. But essentially, those are the rapid transit corridors that we're looking to expand to different parts of the county. So from a land use perspective, from a planning perspective, what are you doing to complement the SMART plan and those stations?
Right. Well, I think you bring up a good point, and that's really, if you look at our comprehensive development master plan and you really read the policies, you see that we have a preferred development pattern in the county, really to channel development in a way that's very so that the system works, so that you're really supporting the transportation. So we have the urban centers. You've got a regional urban center, which is basically downtown. That's the largest of the urban centers. Then you've got what we call metropolitan urban centers, which generally are around the transit stations. Some good examples would be Dadeland or Douglas Station. So those are very important. And then you also have the community urban centers, which tend to be around, some of the like premium bus stops, et cetera. So you've got a number of these urban centers, which really form the connective tissue for the urban development in the county. And so what we've done is really, with the SMART plan, we've taken a look at the connections between those urban centers. And what we've done is we've set some policies in place to really try to increase density, increase intensity in appropriate locations in order to support a transit system. As we know that there's, basically a minimum density that you really need in order to have a vibrant transit system. So that's been the foundation of it. So that's one in terms of introducing policies to encourage that development. And for example, back in 2018, we came up with land use policies that allowed increased density and intensity in these SMART plan corridors, which are basically the areas that are within a quarter mile up to a half mile of the center line. And as you know, we have 6 of these SMART plan corridors in the county. So within those areas, we've just made it much easier to go in and provide transit-oriented development, get the densities and intensities without necessarily going through the full process. For example, with land use, you would have to go in and amend the CDMP. So now basically, if you have a project that's going to meet certain thresholds, you can go directly to zoning. So that's a big, we've seen a lot happening with it. I mean, we do letters of interpretation in our office, basically to indicate and we've we've seen a lot of those. We've really seen it's been one of the more dramatic things in my career is actually to see policy put in place and see almost immediately it being implemented. So it's been gratifying.
And those words scare a lot of people: height, density, intensity. But the reality is, we're growing, and we need to determine where's the best place for that growth to take place.
Absolutely.
Right? Do we want it out in the Everglades? Do we want to keep expanding? We can't. Right?
Yeah.
So the only way to go is really up, and the best place to go up is around transit.
Absolutely.
Right?
Correct.
And so the other word that sometimes scares people is parking incentives.
Sure.
Right? And yet that's a big part of the equation too. So talk about, what are the parking incentives for developers to build in these nodes, and why do we offer those? What's the benefit?
So parking is costly, especially when you're building parking structures. I think now it's between $30,000 and $40,000 for space. So if you talk about when we have the affordability discussion, which I think needs to be brought into this discussion because transit, affordability, where you build, how you build, the cost of building, it's all related. Yeah. Well, if you're building a parking space for $30,000, that gets transferred onto either the rental price or the sales price. That's not the primary reason why we do have some relief on parking. To truly encourage mobility, you want to allow the market to really decide how much parking is needed on a particular location rather than just an artificial minimum parking standard. So we kind of inched into it. We didn't just holistically say, okay, there's no parking standard or it's a market rate. We first started with some of these urban centers and said, look, if you're going to build and you're right at a transit stop, a premium transit, meaning you're at either a major busway down south, or you're on a metro rail station, you're right at the station. I mean, adjacent to the station, within 500 feet, we say, okay, at that point, you can decide on what you're parking in. And as you move away from that station, obviously the likelihood of someone taking transit decreases as you move away from transit. So then we would then require parking. So it's not a one size fits all. It's a flexible standard that looks at the proximity to transit. So closer you're to transit, the less parking that's required. We haven't seen developers fully take advantage of it. We know in the city of Miami, some developers have built with zero parking. We've seen in the county some parking reductions. They still haven't made that business decision to totally reduce it, but we're starting to see that trend in reduction of parking.
And the reality is, until we build out that smart plan and people are able to get to different parts of the county, they may still want at least one car, right? The family car. And so they still need that parking space.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the idea is we want them out of their cars and into transit, right?
Yes. Right.
And beyond transit, let's talk about first, last mile, and walkability. So, I know both of you are engaged in trying to create walkable neighborhoods, especially around these transit zones, but even throughout the county, right? Building these urban centers in places where they haven't historically existed, almost trying to retrofit this on top of an existing community. You did a lot of this in Doral, and I know we're doing it throughout the county. So I'll start with Jerry, talk about walkability, first, last mile connectivity, bicycle infrastructure, and what you're doing from your end to encourage that.
Sure. Well, I think from my end, it's really about just taking a holistic look at it, a holistic look at the transportation system in terms of the full range of mobility, from walking to biking to the other day I had an experience where I was driving across the Venetian Causeway and going onto the beach, and I saw folks on scooters, I saw pedestrians, bikes, the cars, and it was really kind of an interesting experience for me to be in the car and really to feel that the car was just like one piece of it, and really it was just like I'd not, it was an experience I had in Copenhagen a few years ago, and that was one of the first times that I really kind of felt the same thing happening here, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting to see how it works. So I think that's really, in terms of the policy that we have in the CDNP, we really have policies to support the full range of transportation options. And one thing that we've recently done is we've taken the roadway impact fee, which has been in place since the 1980s. And it was really primarily built toward the automobile and to addressing those impacts in development. Within the mobility fee, we went through a study that took almost about 4 years. Recently adopted a new ordinance that's going to go into place at the beginning of next year. And what that's doing is it's really allowing us to fund the full range of mobility options that are impacted from development: the pedestrian piece, the bicycle piece, the first mile, last mile, and still the automobile. It's and transit, of course. So it's taking a more holistic look at that. So I think that's really an example of kind of the direction auto-centric planning model from the 1980s, which we see reflected in our development pattern, to really going in and trying to retrofit it now with a mobility fee with some of these policies. And we kind of see it coming into place. We have a long way to go, but I think that, and that was just last weekend when I had that experience, but I think that we're really getting there and see that more in the future.
Okay. And Nathan, if you could take it,
Sure.
down to your level, and then also speak about your experience in Doral, because that was a real challenge to take what was essentially an industrial area, and then maybe had a lot of subdivisions, which are also not necessarily walkable, and really go back and try to implement some very progressive policies and developments to create urban centers and neighborhoods, in walkable neighborhoods, in a place that didn't have them. So speak to your experience.
Yeah, I mean, what Jerry just talked about isn't just planners' desire for a lot of these good things. They put this in the comprehensive plan. They codify it as the blueprint, and that's that's their prime responsibility. So this document is called the CDMP, or Comprehensive Development Master Plan, and they set this larger vision, they set these parameters, and the board ultimately decides, hey, we want to move in this direction. So the board historically has said, we want to make sure we have walkability, last mile, we want human scale development, we want pedestrianism. They set that framework and policy in the comprehensive plan. They do it very well. They give us some clear guidance. And then where I come in is, kind of the last mile of the planning and zoning process is now I codify it. And we have our planners who take that and say, okay, well, we're developing an urban center zoning standard for developers to utilize, or a rapid transit zone, which is really popular now. And we design those criteria for development in order to promote walkability, appropriate vehicular movements, safety, and these proper aesthetics. So we get extremely granular, where these urban centers designs, what we call them form-based code, rather than having more of our suburban type development, which Miami was developed on, where we're separating land uses. We have big parking fields. We require buildings to be up front. We have shops on the bottom. We have mixed use. We get very specific on the width of the sidewalks, and how vehicles and pedestrians interact. So we do that very, very specifically in our zoning code, and it's taken years to do, but we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. And then with our rapid transit zones, where we do have development in some of our municipalities and at our stations, those codes are premised on how you connect to transit. So as part of the review process, developers have to indicate how they are going to provide those connections, whether it's wayfinding, shelter, improvements to the right-of-way, and in some cases they're proffering actual dollars to these projects. So again, it picks up from a really strong policy into our zoning code. Doral was interesting. Doral was exciting for me.
And you were the planning and zoning director.
I was the planning and zoning director there.
Should have mentioned it.
And we started off, I started about a year and a half after they incorporated. We did not have a comprehensive plan yet. We were still transitioning from Miami-Dade County, so we got to write our own comprehensive plan, our own zoning code, and the board said, we recognize we're industrial, but we have a huge residential area growing. We had a developer that owned, it was the Kroger Center. This was Codina at the time, and they said, you know what, we want to do something special here. And they took their time, and they worked with the municipality, and we said, you know what, we're going to do an urban center. We're going to do a real mixed use type of community. So we were we had
unheard of in Doral.
Right. We had a blank slate. I mean, it was a planner's dream.
That's great.
It was a planner's dream. We had a blank slate. We can get creative. We had a board that was, these were all new elected officials, and they wanted to get creative. So just like kids drawing on and saying what you want to do, we went through those exercises and we identified opportunities, and we were able to design it very, very well. There was a lot of interest in doing it right and doing it methodically. It wasn't just, we want for the sake of doing it. We also hired some pretty good consultants that looked at Doral Boulevard as a corridor. Now you're starting to see it now, where even some of the more suburban type development requires wider sidewalks. So nobody wants to walk down a Kendall Drive or Doral Boulevard when it's 95 degrees and you have parking fields and there's nothing to look at. It's just major suburban. We're trying to urbanize it slowly but surely. So there was more than just a decision to say we want these big nodes. There was a parks master plan. There was a green master plan, and these things kind of work together. So that was an interesting time. They did also, actually, we're talking mobility. They instituted a trolley at the same time.
right.
So we had a plan for where
With their
density is
share
going
of the
to
half
be.
penny sales tax.
Correct. It's a free trolley. It's an amazing system. It's a free trolley. It's used. The students use it. We have the elderly use it.
It does very well.
Yeah, it connects to Palmetto Station, Metro Rail, and they keep on tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So that all happened at the same time. So land use decisions and transportation decisions were done together rather than, okay, we make a land use decision, now how do we retrofit and put in transit? No, those were holistically done. So I think Doral is a good example of a new municipality holistically planning.
Yeah.
Now, no, we don't all have that luxury with these because things evolve over time, but I think a lot of things just led to this synergy of proper planning.
And I'll add, in this community in particular, I think developers sometimes get a bad rap, but there are really good developers out there. And if you work well with them, they'll produce a good product. And Codina, was that private sector partner, right? People love Coral Gables. Coral Gables was developed by George Merrick, who essentially was a developer. Yeah. But he was a developer with that larger vision, and it was able to implement the right codes, obviously, having created the city. So I think that the private sector partnership is critical as well. And I know both of you work with the development community a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, completely agree.
All right. So we went into Nathan's background a little bit in Doral. Jerry, I know that you were in the private sector at some point with Alex David, right? I think that was the name of your firm.
Yeah.
And then Barmello. Tell us about that experience in the private sector and how you use that.
Sure.
Now working for local government. How does that
I'm
apply?
in my 32nd year of planning now, so I'm old school. So basically, I started off at the city of Gainesville, came down and worked for Miami-Dade County as a planner back in the 90s. And decided to, I went for about a year with Bermeo-Ahimel, had a great experience there, and then that gave me the confidence to decide to set off and try to do my own consulting company. So we set up a small, I called it a boutique planning firm, which is me and my business partner, Alex David. We were Bell David Planning Group. We provided service to municipalities basically throughout the state in comprehensive planning and development approval. So we really worked, although we were private sector, we worked primarily with local governments and a lot of smaller communities. We did planning for a lot of the municipalities in Miami-Dade County through that experience. And I think through doing that, then back in 2016, my former boss and mentor, Mark Warner, was retiring, and I've always been impressed with the planning, with how planning is done in Miami-Dade County. It's very data-driven. It's very progressive. So it was just a great opportunity to come in and footsteps, and I've been doing that now it's been 7 years, and it's been a great experience and kind of a full circle experience to come back to where I basically started.
That's great. And one of the things, you're not in the paper often, but when you are, it's usually associated with the urban development boundary.
Correct. Yes.
Which is one of those hot topics in Miami-Dade County that kind of flares up from time to time.
Sure.
What is the UDB? What is your role in that? And where are we with the UDB as a policy in this community? Are we rethinking it? Like, where is it at?
Well, the UDB is basically a very unique planning tool. There are not many local governments in the nation that have a UDB. There's some out west, Portland, I think, Seattle. But basically, it's a regulatory tool that defines where urban development can occur and where it should not. And basically, as you know, the plan has a horizon of about 20 to 30 years. So really, in the UDB, we're looking at distinguishing the area. And why the UDB is important in Miami-Dade County is because we're very land constrained. We have some unique factors that a lot of other municipalities do not have. We've got 2 national parks. We've got a lot of very sensitive environmental features, and we also have a vibrant agricultural industry. So the UDB is really a tool to make sure that we A, recognize the scarcity of land, and B, that we're using it in the best possible way in terms of our planning. So basically, it allows us to take an approach where we're really looking at maximizing development potential within the boundary, before we look at going outside. And the UDB is not meant to be, it's not drawn in concrete, it's not a permanent line, so there is a process where it can be revisited periodically, where we look at, the population projections, we look at our economic need, and we basically have to maintain a 10-year supply of land within the UDB. So once we have less than a 10-year supply, really that's the point when you should start looking at, okay, where should it be expanded? Where are the areas where it could most likely be? And we have the process where we accept private applications once every 2 years. Those applications are measured against the needs threshold. And if there is a demonstrated need, then it can be looked at moving it. The UDB has moved, I think the perception is it moves frequently. It has not moved frequently. It is not, in the last 10 years, there's only been really one big application, the aligned application, which has been approved by the commission, but it hasn't happened often. As you know, when it's an expensive process, it has a very extensive review. So it's very carefully done. It's very thoughtfully done, and it's really a matter of where we in planning, take a look at the data. We take a look, present a case to the Board of County Commissioners, and ultimately it's their policy decision.
Yeah. And everything is interconnected, right? So I've always thought of the UDB as the lid on a pressure cooker, right?
Absolutely.
And that forces development then to take place within that lid as opposed to continuing to expand.
Absolutely.
It's much more expensive to do infill than to do new development on open land. And so one of the ways to get developers to invest in infill is by forcing them to do so, because you can't keep going out, right? And that has led to a lot of this infill development and our transit-oriented development. So it really is an important tool, not just for environmental purposes, for agricultural purposes, but to force that development where you want it. That incentivize it, right?
That's absolutely true. I mean, the UDB, as much as the urban centers and as much as the smart plan corridor is an essential part of that equation of really trying to develop in the most efficient and the best manner possible in the way that's most sensitive to our resources.
Now, another development, one of the criticisms potentially of the UDB is that it limits the supply of housing and may lead to housing becoming more expensive as it is today, and contributing to that affordability issue. You mentioned affordability earlier. So what are we doing as a community, and particularly through planning and zoning, to tackle that affordable housing crisis? And kind of weave into that, if you will, the Live Local Act, which just passed the legislature. I think this past legislative session kind of flew under the radar outside of the industry. But the second they proposed, a 40-story tower, I think, on Ocean Drive.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, everybody knows about it in that kind of extreme case. So talk to us about affordable housing and what we're doing, to create more of it, to incentivize development, and how Live Local kind of weaves into all that.
Well, I think the pressure cooker is a great example of how you describe the UDB and how you contain development within the specific area. But if we artificially kept densities, let's say, extremely low within that pressure cooker, there's justification to keep on expanding because there's no room left. But with the urban centers and our policies, we've increased those intensities and densities significantly, where developers can realize a significant number of units, a lot of units, and our research and our data shows that we do have a supply, a land use supply, significant land use supply of residential units, and we're starting to see that paradigm shift of low density sprawl to mixed use density. Or moderate density. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be super high density where you have your 40-story tower, but we call it the missing middle, where you have your 3-story, 4-story, and these little infill projects. And that paradigm shift is starting to see units get built. So we do believe we have the capacity, and in order to decrease housing costs, you got to allow for the saturation of the market. So we believe we do have the available opportunity for the private sector to saturate the market. With that, we also have policies that encourage additional, let's call them workforce housing units or affordable housing units, where either the rent or the sales price is controlled and geared to families of certain incomes. And we have a density bonus program where if you provide some of these units, you can get an actual density bonus. So we do that at a micro scale and a macro scale. So on smaller lots, like single family lots, there's certain opportunities where you can put 2 or 3 units if you provide for workforce and affordable housing. And we're seeing that program really take off. And that's happening all over the county. And then on multifamily, we give height bonuses, massing bonuses, and you get your density bonuses where you can increase density up to 25% if you provide a certain amount of workforce housing. So we call that inclusionary zoning. It is a bonus program. Now, where we have our rapid transit zones, where we have our highest densities in our urban centers and our rapid transit nodes, where in some cases we have 150, 125 to 250 units per acre, and some of those we mandate 12.5% workforce housing. It's not in all occasions, but in many of those areas, it's a mandate. So we're saying, okay, we're going to give you additional density and a lot of density, but you got to provide some of these workforce housing units. So that is the private sector approach. Now, on the public housing side, they're looking at opportunities for private partnerships, private-public partnerships, as well as starting to develop a greater inventory of housing that falls under the county's purview. Again, not just all workforce are affordable, but mixed income type projects where you have a combination of market rate and mixed use. And we think that's the best approach when you have a mixture of relative incomes. So that's where the county is going with workforce and affordable housing.
And I understand you're moving to the Public Housing and Community Development Department.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Yes,
What are you going to be
thank
doing there?
I'm going to be heading up their planning and development section. Okay. So using the zoning knowledge and the planning knowledge to really target and identify more property for construction, for building. Also, at the same time, developing communities, really allowing, facilitating community growth. So private sector can then take off from where the county leads off in starting to beautify an area. Okay, the private sector comes in. You did mention Live Local. Live Local is going to be a fabulous tool if used responsibly.
Yes, that's the issue.
If used responsibly, it's going to be a fabulous tool because it's going to open up a lot of these commercial and industrial parcels, which the county through Jerry's policies on Smart Corridor already recognizes that whether it's commercial, industrial, if you're within the proximity of transit, we believe philosophically that's where we should see mixed-use development because of that geographic location. The state took it a little bit further. There are certain things in there that deal with height and density that we're trying to iron out. But conceptually, this is going to open up a lot of opportunity and creativity. We want to make sure that, again, it's used responsibly, so we're not interrupting and disrupting existing communities. We can build in context with those communities, but we feel that this will provide some opportunity. Again, if used responsible, and we're starting to see some applications come in. So far, they're good applications. They're context sensitive to the neighborhood, while developing on property that normally wouldn't or would have had to gone through an extensive and exhaustive process to be developed.
Jerry, is there anything that we're looking to do on the policy side to kind of take the unintended consequences potentially of Live Local and kind of smooth out, those issues? For instance, building, an enormous building in a historic district, where it's kind of out of scale and out of context. I mean, is there anything we can do or we are doing in planning to kind of counteract that?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we and working with development services as well are really trying to do is I think Nathan's correct. I think Live Local does present a great opportunity, but with that comes as you're bringing up a lot of issues in terms of neighborhood compatibility, in terms of scale of development and how we do that. So I think we really in the county we're really looking at an increased focus on neighborhood level planning, frankly, and really looking at how we can integrate that more effectively, how we can to address many of the concerns that are inevitably going to come up from the neighbors and from that. So we're really looking at just how to make for example, we've recently done an update of our urban design manual. So we're really trying to take a look at that manual in terms of the issues that we're dealing with now and how we can make sure that development as it comes in is introduced in a way that's compatible, that strengthens our existing neighborhoods, and so that it can all work together. So it's a big challenge, and I think it's going to be one of our key planning challenges over the next decade, frankly.
Yeah, there's going to be a glitch bill at the state level, and that's going to, I think, hopefully will fix or clarify a lot of these issues. We know the municipalities have a lot of questions. Some municipalities have passed moratoriums on Senate Bill 102. I guess my message to these municipalities and to the legislatures, let's continue this conversation, not in the goal of trying to nix or to repeal Senate Bill 102, but you've set a strong policy, which I think philosophically a lot of people are supportive of. But let's make this neighborhood, let's ensure that there's some local control, not local prohibition, but some local control where there could be some augmentation of some of these standards. The local officials do understand what some of those residents, they represent the residents, so they have to have some say in that. But ultimately, I think that there's a discussion to be had, and I think there's probably a preemption with some local control that could be married together for a really good policy to be implemented to solve some of these problems on workforce and affordable housing.
Yeah, it's all about finding that balance, right?
Yes.
And there's a give and take to everything.
Yeah.
So let's use a concrete example of where all this stuff we've talked about today kind of comes together, and that's Metro Center. I don't know if it's under the cone of silence or if you're even able to talk about it, but I imagine both of you had some hand in this. So I don't know which one of you wants to take this, but what is Metro Center? Where is it at in its development stage? And how does it kind of touch on some of these things we've been talking about? I don't know who wants to take it.
I'll take it, sure.
Okay.
Sure. So Metro Center, I'll start from the very beginning, and this goes back to the late 90s, early 90s, late 80s, when the planning department really started developing these urban nodes, these urban centers, and they put a big circle on the map. It was a dot on the map, as simple as that, and said, downtown is a regional urban center. It's 500 units per acre. This is where the density has to go. I think that was obviously a very smart decision. The Metro Rail was being built late 80s. We developed what we called the rapid transit zoning, which allows for, it started with the county-owned stations within municipalities to develop under the county, not the municipality, to implement those urban center policies. Right. So we had transit, we had the stations, we had density, and the government center, Stephen P. Clark Center's built, and the county owns 26 parcels around there. That was part of an old DRI, which is, for planning geeks, it's, I guess now it's old and antiquated planning tool. It was a very useful planning tool, but it's basically a large development that, goes through a pretty substantial process.
Intensive regional review.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, it goes to the state. So it was a high dense area, and that kind of just sat there for years and years and years. Nothing much happened. And as the county developed the rapid transit zoning, we said, you know what, we should be taking a larger area around the government center station. Right. And we took all of our parcels. We said it's going to fall under the county's jurisdiction. We wrote what we called the government center rapid transit zone, which had its development standards, all the pedestrianism, your setback provisions, uses. It was, in essence, a very small zoning code just for that area. Pre-COVID, the board said, you know what, we want to look at, the district commissioner was Eileen Higgins. She said, I want to look at this further. We want more of a master plan. We did some charrette work. We worked with the community. We worked with the various agencies in the county, as we have facilities there. We have our library. We want to do a bus terminal. So we have some unique county needs as well. We developed standards, and those standards, above and beyond the code, were part of an RFP that went out for really a master developer. So I can't talk too much about that because we're going through that process, but the decision was made that instead of individually on these 26 parcels to go out for individual,
think holistically.
We're going to have a master developer to come in, and we're going through that process now.
And we didn't dictate exactly what needs to happen within those acres. We want the private sector to kind of propose ideas, right?
Absolutely.
Is that the idea?
Correct.
With certain goals and objectives, to be met.
We set we designed the skeleton, and that meat's going to be put on by the developer. So we have some general goals and objectives. We know, we have our internal services likes to look at highest and best use. We have our housing department that is looking at it from more of a workforce housing, how we can implement that. So we have a lot of competing interests that are really all talking together, which is a good thing. This is going to be a project that spans many years. It's huge.
Yeah.
Again, it's 26 parcels.
This is our Hudson Yards, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good comparison. And we did actually, and I'll share it with you, when we put out the report, we did look at Hudson Yards. We looked at some examples in Japan. Japan is very oriented on development right at their stations. In fact, you can't even see their rail or transit stations because it's enveloped in just development. That's the development is the primary. The station becomes the secondary. So we looked at some worldly examples, and that's thanks to our fabulous planner, Jess Lynn. He needs to get the credit for that. So yeah, we're going through those planning stages, and we have some concepts. We have park space that we have to preserve.
Right.
We potentially changing the orientation of the county chambers.
Right.
So
History of Miami, you have the library, all these things need to be reincorporated.
Absolutely. So we do have some nice graphic images of concepts, but no, the whole idea is that we want to see some creativity, and most importantly, we want to make sure that each phase of this development can address public needs, private needs, and look at also highest and best use, and be responsible with our property and taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, wearing my old Downtown Development Authority hat. Right. I mean, it's been in the hole in a donut for a long time. You see behind you, downtown has grown along the waterfront. It's grown in Brickell. It's growing north. The one area that kind of remains to be really developed in a comprehensive way is that government center area. Obviously, Miami Central and Brightline coming, into that equation helps a lot. And I think it's probably spurring a lot of this interest in that area. But at the end of the day, that's got to be some of the most valuable land in the country, if not the world. It's in the middle of this dense, growing, popular downtown.
Yes.
And so I would imagine you're going to get a lot of interest in this, and hopefully it comes to fruition. So.
The only people really not happy, I wouldn't say people's the downtown chickens. They don't like it. They're going to be booted out.
No, come on. We've got to find a way
to incorporate them. Yeah.
First of all, any place that's ever tried to get rid of the roosters have failed miserably.
Exactly.
They're canny animals.
Right.
So, guys, we only have a couple minutes left. I don't know if I've missed anything that you want to talk about. Any projects you're working on? Anything on the horizon that's exciting?
Well, I think
we touched on a lot. So.
Yeah, we touched on a lot, and I think that I think on the horizon, it's really we put in place in the past. The county's put great policies in place, and it's just a matter of really seeing how they're being implemented. So in terms of, I'm very proud and that we've adopted the smart plan policies in the CDMP. I'm proud that we were able to get the mobility fee adopted. I think that's going to really play out with it and make a big difference. So I think it's really just taking a look. I mean, Miami-Dade County is one of the most fascinating places to be a planner in the country. Yeah. And I know it's not a competition, but just in terms of the challenges we face, the growth and the continual pressure, the scarcity of the land, we're dealing with the climate change and with resilience and affordable housing and traffic. So we have so many issues, so many challenges, but also so many opportunities. So it's really exciting. I think things are coming together, and.
Anything else from you, Nathan?
I think Jerry said it perfectly.
Perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Let me actually, one last thing. I know that at least you have a couple of advisory boards where citizens can kind of get involved in some of these issues. Planning Advisory Board and the Ag?
Yes. We had the Planning Advisory Board under our purview, which reviews the development applications, makes recommendations to our Board of County Commissioners for CDMP amendments, as well as other planning issues. We have the Agriculture Practices Advisory Board, which really looks at agriculture is a key industry in Miami-Dade County. It's a very and all industries have a lot of connection to the land, but of course, it's such a central connection there to land use. So that board deals with a lot of the agricultural issues. We also have the as I mentioned, we have the Office of Historic Preservation, so we have the Historic Preservation Board, which also meets, and just really looking at, as we develop and as we address these challenges, we also have to maintain and,
And do you have any citizen advisory boards where people who might be interested, can engage, or?
Well, we have
Mostly in Jerry's
engagement. Most of it is through our public hearing process. So we
Right.
have our community councils, which are our regional councils that hear zoning and comprehensive plan items. And of course, any land use amendment or zoning application gets noticed to the residents directly. It's also in the newspaper. So that's one avenue.
There's also still elected positions largely, right?
Those are largely elected, and should we not have enough members to meet a quorum, then the elected officials, the Board of County Commissioners, the district commissioners can appoint. We have a really cool interactive tool that I think a lot of your viewers and residents may like, and it's our land management viewer, and that you can see zoning, land use information, these smart corridors that Jerry's talking about. We have a layer of that, so you can actually see the width and the location of those, the urban centers, so where those nodes are. And it's just a wealth of information, and it's kind of fun to play around with. It's not too complicated. We try to make it pretty simple to use, but a lot of these concepts that we've talked about can be visualized using that tool. It's called the Land Management Viewer, and we can get you the.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes,
I have to say.
Yeah.
So if folks are interested in perhaps learning more about these opportunities for engagement or applying, where should they go? What should they do? Should they reach out to your department, to their district commissioner, so PAB,
sure.
community councils? What would be your advice to them?
Well, if they're interested in being on a community council, which we do have vacancies on many of the boards, and those will now be appointed by the district commissioner, they can contact us. It's geographically based. They have to live in the
Right.
unincorporated area and fall within that community council. But we can assist them and let them know, which board that they would be on and which Board of County Commissioner that they need to interact with in order for them to get their support. So that would be with us. They could,
Like zoning at Miami-Dade, or like where would they go?
they could email me directly, nathan.kogan@miamidade.gov.
Okay,
Sure. Or jerry.bell@miamidade.gov.
fantastic.
Excellent.
Well, folks, there you have it. I want to thank both of you for appearing on the program and for everything you do. You really are, I think, unsung heroes of everything that's happening in Miami-Dade County. You got your finger in it all. You're helping direct this county towards a positive future, and you don't get enough credit for it. But I want to thank you personally, and thanks, and keep up the great work, and
Thank you so much.
good luck in public housing.
Thank you.
And Jerry, thank
Excellent.
you, sir. Appreciate it. Folks, that's all the time we have here today for Mobility Matters. You can find us here every other Thursday from 9 to 10 a.m. If you're looking for more information on what's happening at the CITT or with transit, you can visit our website at miamidade.gov/CITT. And if you're interested in following up with what's happening in planning or zoning, I believe the website is probably miamidade.gov/RER. Would that be fair? Go to miamidade.gov.
Exactly.
Look it up under departments. It's all there. Thank you, and see you in a couple weeks.